Hello, welcome back to the temple. And today we're going to be discussing the light that exists in between all things, at the very center and very heart of those things. It's like being next to the warm hearth of some ancient medieval cottage, nice and homey and cozy for you. Did you know that hearth, the words hearth and earth, are actually similar and related to each other? Well, earth is our home after all, and we should feel nice and cozy to know that. And especially even cozier to know that light exists at the very center of it and in between all things related to it. So light exists between all things, and its spirit of fire exists within the very center of all life, all living things rather. This light of fire and fire of light, in fact, is the very principle which upholds those very things, keeping them from falling apart and ceasing to exist. For example, when observing our solar system, is it not the sun which is in its very center that keeps all the surrounding planets in its orbit? I'd say yes. And without the sun, they would all fly away, most of them becoming instantly frozen and crumbling into dust, space dust. Now that we have seen the macrocosm, then, let's take a look at the microcosm. Atoms are the tiniest units of life, and they too have a system of their own. For example, the nucleus of an atom is the atom's sun, or solar center, containing various protons and neutrons, while the electrons surrounding it are like the planets, each of them having their own orbit, respectively. Now consider the consequences if one were to split the nucleus of that atom. What would they get? Well, they would get a massive release of fire, resulting in the explosive magnitude of an atomic bomb. That's what they would get. And this is because light and fire is contained within the centermost of an atom, and therefore it's contained in the centermost of all life, all living things, because all living things are composed of atoms, the basic building blocks. And this is from the largest planetary system all the way down to the tiniest of molecules. Now, so consider the consequences if one were to somehow split our sun in half. Think about that. The whole solar system would burst in the blink of an eye and vanish, as if it never existed. So light, while explosive and fiery if one is able to split life apart, is actually also the balance between all things and all life. For example, both solar systems and atoms are in perfect balance and harmony to themselves, which is why they revolve around their light source and brilliantly, they're in perfect balance and harmony, which is why their planets and their surrounding bodies revolve around their light source in a brilliantly smooth, rounded elliptical orbit. So it's the planets that revolve around the center light source, and they all form perfectly balanced elliptical orbits. They would seem to be in a state of equilibrium with their parent sun or nucleus, and both sides of their orbit would equal the same if added together. They would both be in the same shape, the same proportion, diameter, and angle to each other, because that's what equilibrium does. As a matter of fact, equilibrium and magnetism are but one and the same principle, and the light at the center of things, as well as between the two sides or two poles of any given thing, is the great equilibrator and magnetizer of those things. And it is because of this principle that all living things have two sides. That is, two eyes, two ears, two nostrils, two hands, feet, etc. And each side will always equal the other in shape, size, and proportion. That is, unless there is some form of malformity. But one could also agree that all things have two sides which are equal, because that is the manifestation of equilibrium, and the manifestation of equilibrium is the true manifestation of the light contained in between, the equilibrator. So in between the two eyes, for instance, is the hidden third eye. And this third eye is the eye of light, as you may have already known and guessed it, because it lies directly in between the other two eyes, the eye of light right there. The third eye actually connects one to the light, and receives the light and expresses the light which pours through the crown. As a matter of fact, the space at the center of the human skull, the space which receives the light, is actually just an open soft spot on the head when the human is born, or when the baby is born. However, after 2 to 3 months, this space is grown over by bones and skull tissue, and the gap is closed. Could it be that when a child is born into this world, the spirit of light is descending down into their brain through that soft space in between, thus connecting them to the source before closing after 3 months? And is it also a coincidence that, according to the biblical narrative, the stone was placed over the tomb of Christ for 3 days until the supposed resurrection? Also, when examining the wheel of the zodiac, the upper arc belonging to the realm of the rising sun quite naturally resembles the shape of the top of a human head. And the sign of Cancer, which is the very center of that arch and arc-like current movement, is just an empty space. For example, there is no stone placed there. This directly corresponds to the missing bone on the top of the baby's head. And as a matter of fact, the sign of Cancer takes place during the summer solstice of the year, in which the sun is at its highest point in the sky. According to esoteric lore, this exaltation of the sun opens up a portal called the Gate of Man, in which the spirit of light descends from the heavens to enter into physical form, and can also be associated with childbirth, hence the term Midsummer's Eve, and so forth. In our case, however, this time of year is directly in between the cross of the 2 equinoxes, both spring and fall respectively, which means it is the time of the light, both literally in nature and spiritually within. So as the light at the centermost region of the zodiac descends from heaven into our crown, the right in the middle of our skulls, which is also the missing space of the archway, it thus reflects within our third eye, which is at the centermost region of our brains, also directly in between our two hemispheres of the brain, as well as our 2 physical eyes. If we go further down, it can then be located in the center of the mouth, the tongue. Therefore, the word itself is light because it's at the center of all things. It is the word is right at the center of the mouth. The tongue, the holy word. Let there be light was actually the first word uttered, or the first string of words. And even the sound alone issuing forth from it contained the very potency of the light itself, especially the substance of that light, in which its penetrating vibrations of sound formed and shaped the cosmos in its own image and according to its properties, which are of the principles of equilibrium and magnetism, as discussed before. So the word and sound alone molds and shapes the universe around it, resulting in the pristine symmetry of sacred geometry. This example can be seen in the use of solfeggio frequencies upon a surface layered with sand. The vibrations, for instance, of the frequencies being played shape the sand into various geometrical forms, with almost all of them being equally symmetric to each other, just like our hands, just like the 2 sides of our bodies. And then further down from this sacred sound vibration of light, one will see the heart chakra, the heart, located at the very center of their chest. The heart then must be made of light, for it is right in between the 2 halves of a human being, as well as at the very center of them. Therefore, the love and compassion emanating from it within it must also be the light. The heart also reveals intuition, which is the light located in between the realm of instinct and the realm of intellect. For example, intuition simply knows because it feels both the natural instinct, which once belonged to animals, and the intellectual understanding of that knowing belonging to human, which is light. So in between the instinctual animal nature of man and the intellectual knowing understanding of man is the light of intuition, of which the heart conveys and vibrates. So also, for example, the intuition simply knows, we already said that. It feels the natural instinct of the animal and the intellectual understanding of the human, combining them both into intuition, which is light. And also around the heart are the two lungs, along with their two primary functions, inhalation and exhalation. Therefore, in between the inhalation and exhalation must be the light fire of God, which makes up his very breath, and the two functions must be equally balanced by that very fire located in between. In Kabbalistic or Jewish terms, this breath of God, the inhalation, exhalation, breathes the fire out, the fire of creation and life outward. So the breath itself must be one and perfectly equilibrated. Therefore, at the very middlemost part of the inhalation and exhalation must be that very fire of spirit and of life. So while examining the chakras, the heart is also at the very center of the chakra network, which is colored green in this instance, corresponding to the centermost color of a rainbow, which is also green. Nature is also the center of our own planet, and a perfect example of this, because it's also green, and it's located right directly in between the skies or heavens and the ground, which is earth. Therefore, the heart chakra is not only just the light of love and compassion, it is also the light of generation, fertility, abundance, and creation, because it is also nature, and that color is green. Green is the color of generation, fertility, abundance, and creative energy. Therefore, green is the color of all those things, and that's what makes it light. That's what makes it the force of light, because it lies in the very center of the color spectrum itself. Just as stated before, light is at the very center of all things. So green is the center of the very color spectrum itself, making it light, making it the same light. So the heart is not only the place of emotions, it is also the living power existing in our centers, pulsating life and vitality throughout our entire bodies. The heart is the living generator of the entire network of life, located directly at the center. And this very life and vitality is made of pure light. Now, going back to ancient traditions, the symbol of the cross wasn't quite what it means today. Now, many people place the cross right directly center of themselves, the heart. But to the ancients, it didn't mean things such as crucifixion or the sacrifice of Christ. To them, it was rather a symbol of the crossing of the four elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And they even believed that there was a fifth element at the center called the quintessence, which is contained in the very centermost region of them all. And this quintessence actually made the fingers of our hands. For instance, at one point, the cross was represented by the four elements all crossing each other, or the 4 points of each line crossing to the middle, while the middle part created a fifth element, the element of light, and of the quintessence descended down into matter. This is also displayed in the 5-pointed star, the blazing star, as they call it, the star of initiation. And it is because the highest point of the star is actually the fifth element, and the element of light and the quintessence, which combines all the other four elements together. So yeah, this quintessence is actually the pure light, and the substance of that light, which is the spirit, crossing into matter. So the other symbol of the cross would be the vertical plane of spirit crossing into the horizontal plane, which is matter. And the concept is simply of unveiling that spirit, the nature of that spirit, which is pure light. This cross is also the symbol for the passage of time, in case you didn't know that. And there's a reason why they use the number, or the letter T rather, to describe time, because the T is also a cross. And this cross and time is also associated with the planet Saturn, of whom is the god of time. And his cross, when folded into a cube-like shape, represents the limitation that time has on our material plane or material world. It can also be seen like as the matrix, the limitation or restriction that time and space has on our in our world rather. So one line of the cross represents the past flow of time. The other line represents the present flow of time. And this ancient symbol has also been seen in the form of a plus sign or a multiplication sign, which in their very nature of the symbol, they continue to add and multiply onto themselves infinitely. But when one learns how to separate the two lines and finally line them up side by side, they form the equal sign. And the passage of the past, or the crossing of the past with the crossing of the future or the present, is now finally no longer active. And everything is sent into a realm which is called the eternal now. And in the eternal now, everything is equal in the perfect state of equilibrium, as well as the perfect state of stillness, in which time itself, or the passage or flow of time itself, ceases to exist. And finally, the self-realized individual recognizes their higher self within the spiritual dimension. And that is their light being, their light selves, beings of light. Now, this space in between the two lines that were finally separated, once crossing each other, and is rather the place where light exists in the perfect state of stasis, in which the individual is in a meditative trance or meditative state, where they get to connect to the light source itself. And the flow of time has been finally beaten, as well as the cross being finally overcome, and they thus triumph over it and its negative influences. They triumph over the cross and its negative influences on the plane of matter. This is the secret of meditation, and this is why meditation is so effective for achieving that perfect state of oneness, because when one remains still and silent, they are basically cutting off the passage of time, especially of their normal day-to-day lives, and thus separating the line of the cross and aligning them side by side, forming the equal sign. And it is this equal sign which symbolizes the state of balance and equilibrium that the individual discovers, not in between the two lines. And in between the two lines of this equal sign is the very light of the realized source located at the center. So meditation is especially important. Even movement itself, if seen, is also seen as a passage through time. And for instance, a jogger who goes out for a run is moving through space-time. Therefore, they are continuing to flow in and of time itself. And even as they move forward through time, they're also moving backwards. There's also a sense of moving backwards at the same time, because that's the nature and the flow of time itself. But when that individual decides to meditate and be still and sit in a state of stillness and silence, they're actually stopping and pausing the flow of time itself, in which they can finally achieve that state of balance and equilibrium of the light. Time, it's very funny because time is even seen as the fourth dimension. So also corresponding to the other elements of the four, the color green, which is the fourth color of the color spectrum, the fourth race of humanity, which is the human race, the fourth kingdom in nature, and finally the heart, which is the fourth chakra of the chakra network. Then time is, as the fourth dimension, is the very center itself between two realms. Therefore, it is also light. Time is also light. I forgot to mention that earlier. We as a human race, in between the other seven uh, planes of existence, we're also the light. We as humans are also the light because we're the fourth race. There's minerals, vegetables, animals, and then humans. And after humans is the three subplanes of ether. But we, as the center of them all, are the very light beings and light bearers of the whole spectrum. Center itself. Therefore, so time is also light. So in order to catch that light and prevent it from escaping and flowing into the passage of time, we simply pause or push the pause button on our realities, which is also the equal sign, and thus merge with it. Therefore, it becomes one with us and united side by side, just like the equal sign shows us. So in music, we can even go further and study music. In music, it is actually the fourth mode. The fourth mode, which is at the center of all the other seven modes. And it is called the Lydian mode. As the center, and as a matter of fact, this Lydian mode is considered in music to be the brightest mode of them all. And that is because it's the mode of pure light. And in between all the other ones, it is the brightest, among the brightest and highest of them all. Quite literally, the light contained between the rest of them. The Lydian mode even contains the secret note of light that was once transformed and turned into a negative sound by the time the medieval ages showed up, in which they referred to this note as the diabolos in musica, and they demonized it, attempting to shed a dark perspective onto it. But actually, as a matter of fact, this note's original home is in the Lydian mode, which actually, seen in the form of Lydian, gives it the brightest sound of all the other modes and scales in the musical spectrum. And the Lydian mode actually produces a dreamy-like sound, which seems almost heavenly in nature, as a fun fact. And furthermore, although light may be that force which penetrates through all the darkness, it can actually be seen as the empty space itself, which is the place where consciousness and the intellect shine. For instance, gas, which is at the center of the form or the human form, in between, like in the realm of the empty space, its property is to rise up into the air, which is located in our brains, the air of intellect. And when it does, when the gas finally meets our brains, it transforms into creative energy and thus produces thought forms and ideas. This gas is also in the region of the air. And for example, this gas is also made of pure light. There's no difference between the empty space and light. Therefore, there also is no difference between light and darkness, because as a matter of fact, to be surrounded by complete light is also to be blinded by that very light, which results in darkness, and vice versa. When looking up upon the empty, dark void such as space or the night sky, one is also trapped in the same blinding place, unable to know where they are, what they're looking at. So it's much like the same. Being blinded by the light is also to be trapped in the realm of the dark. So instead of seeing the darkness for what it is, darkness is just another form of light, which happens to blind the individual receiving it. So our consciousness itself, though dark in nature, though it seems like an empty space, is actually the light. And in between the earth and our skies or heavens is the region of air, and that air is our consciousness and intellect, the light in between heaven and earth. In fact, there is no space in between light and darkness, because light and darkness themselves are but one of the same being. There is no space in between life and death either, because both contain the same life or the same light. For instance, to pass into death is to also pass into light again, and vice versa. when a child is born into this world, they have already begun the slow process of death. And then when dying, when a person leaves this world and dies, they are entering into a state of true light yet again. And that is where light exists, right in between the two polarities. Whatever it may be, life and death, hot and cold, white and black, it's all the same. The light exists right in between. For example, when a person chooses to meditate, they are allowing their current selves and as well as their egos to die off. And their current state of consciousness that they carried through the day is shedding away and dying off, while they are entering a state of a sort of a death, a state of personal death, in which they finally merge with the reality, the true reality, and receive the light which is contained in between the two, the living parts of them and the dying parts of them. And then on the other hand, a person who is staying very active throughout the day and avoiding meditation, instead they're actually showing all of the activity of life. They're actually in a state of death in which their brains and their spirits could possibly be completely shut off from their current busy day-to-day life. But just as always, in between the two of them exists the light, which quite literally holds everything together within. Without the light as our central most essence, we would simply fall apart. It is like the blood in our bodies, which keeps our skin and our bones attached together, and the blood itself is also light. In between the father and the mother is the child, and that child is the child of light, the one born of light. In between the two pillars of mercy and severity is the virtue of justice, and that justice is the supreme light. In between the earth and the heavens, or our world and the skies, is the air of light, as spoken before, the light of intellect. The air is also the light that we breathe in with fresh oxygen into our lungs, and it is also the light of our consciousness and understanding. Just as the bridge between heaven and earth, the light exists as the stream which carries one to and fro in between it. In the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz, there's a perfect example of this. When the group leaves the land of earth and goes into heaven, they must cross this vast ocean. And on this ocean is the fairy woman called, and her name is Virgo Lucifera, and she's the one who carries them from the earth region into the heavenly region. So the ocean which she carries them to and fro from is the ocean of light and the connecting bridge in between heaven and earth. And she, as Virgo Lucifera, is the one who carries them, the bearer, the one who carries them across the stream to and fro from heaven and earth. So a few examples. As the fourth planet, including our sun, our planet Earth is also at the center of the 7 classical planets, making it a production and emanation of the light. And even furthermore, at the very center of our planet is a molten core of fire. So in between our fair planet is light as well. The number 4 even actually has a special meaning in numerology because it contains the same element of the number 1 added into itself. And the number 7 also contains the same number 1 added into itself. So it respectively contains the same principle or active life force of the 1, but the number 4 at the center of them all is actually the building block of matter. So from the 1 and the 2 came the 3, or the initial trinity, but it was the 4 who became the actual building block of matter. And so that building block could be the very DNA inside of all living things, at the center of all living things rather, and that very molecule of substance in between life, which makes it also a production of light. Nature itself too, being in between the hot and cold regions of our planet, is the perfect breeding ground and also a perfect emanation of the light, because it exists directly in between the two extremes of the polarities. And it even serves as a reflection or a beautiful mirror to the heavens, the realm of pure light. So the fruits produced by the trees and plants and bushes are actually the children of both the masculine and feminine principles of nature. Thus, they are also the children of light. So the fruits are also the fruits made of light because they are the children of the two polarities of nature. The Garden of Eden, for example, exists right in the centralmost region of ourselves and our spirits, as well as our minds, because, and rather, therefore, it is the place of true, pure light as well. And quite naturally, the Garden of Eden is like the mirror of heaven. The watery side of the light is the fact that it fills and completely develops and envelops all nooks and crannies and cracks and crevices inside of us, inside of all things rather, and in between of all things, such as the way a cup would contain water, and in it fills all the spaces up inside of it, in between it, with the light's eternal presence. And this substance, the substance of it, makes it at the center of those very things. Therefore, the more empty space and the more hollowed out one might have, such as wounds and crevices, or scars, or it only allows more room for the light to be able to pour inside themselves and for them to contain it. As a matter of fact, in between both pain and pleasure is light. The light is there to equilibrate them both and make the pain and pleasure seem as both the same thing. They both seem as if they were one and the same. As a matter of fact, they are the same. Both pleasure and pain are of the same light. Therefore, they're the same. And all of this leads into the fact that there is a one source, and one source alone, which is made of pure light. And it is all because of this one source, which is at the center of all things and all realities, that we are able to even see this light and to even know what it is and begin to understand it. The center that we realize and that we discover is in fact everywhere at the same time, everywhere at every time, in all places. And it is only when you discover it that 1,000 more yet are even born. So our job is to find these centers in between all things where the light exists. And when we discover it, 1,000 more are born from it. So the journey is ever so active, and it never does have an ending place. So go out there and find your new centers and discover the light. And please like and subscribe. But until next time, have a great day.